Have you ever driven alone at night with a dead body in the back of your vehicle and suddenly felt like you weren't the only one breathing? I don't ask that to be dramatic. I ask because I lived it, because there was a night, a bitterly cold night when I swear the body in the back of my hearse knocked. Not just once, not like something shifting from the road bumps. I mean 3 hard, deliberate knocks, as if he was still in there trying to get out. I know what you're thinking. Maybe the hearse creaked, maybe something fell, maybe I was tired and hearing things, and I thought that too. God help me, I tried to explain it away. But you can't unhear that sound, or unsee the frost-covered window with one small perfect handprint pressed against the inside. And here's the part I've never told anyone, not even my supervisor. When I opened the back door to check, the body was still there, but the bag zipper was open halfway. I hadn't touched it. What I'm about to tell you isn't a ghost story. It's a confession, and if I ever disappear, if one night I vanish while on the job, I want someone, anyone, to remember this story, because I think what I transported that night was never supposed to rest in peace. My name is Daniel Mercer. I've been a hearse driver for over 9 years. If you're picturing some morbid-looking guy in all black, hunched over the wheel with a cigarette dangling from his lips, well, you wouldn't be far off on some days. But truth is, I'm just a man who got used to silence. I didn't start in death. I used to be a delivery driver for a flower shop, if you can believe that. But when my mother died unexpectedly, I found myself drawn to the other side of it all. Not the grief part, God no, but the logistics, the movement, getting people to where they were supposed to go, even if they were already gone. I work out of St. Elias Mortuary, a third-generation funeral home tucked between an abandoned diner and a rundown muffler shop on Route 9, just outside Ashton. It's a tired place with peeling white siding and windows that never stop sweating in the winter. Inside, everything smells like old varnish, lilies and disinfectant. The air is always a few degrees too cold, even in August. The fluorescents flicker sometimes, not from ghosts, just from neglect. The carpets are that funeral home maroon, thick enough to muffle footsteps. I learned early on how to walk without a sound, how to vanish into the background. I drive one of the older hearses in our fleet, a 1998 Cadillac with a cassette deck, and a faint rattle in the dashboard that no mechanic can find. She's black, of course, always washed, always spotless on the outside, but inside the air holds on to things, a weight, a hush that's different from normal silence, like the air has memory, like it's listening. Most days it's business, pick up from hospitals, hospices, or the coroner's office. Sometimes I help with removals at crime scenes, suicides, overdoses. You get used to the stillness in the back, to knowing there's a body behind you. You stop thinking of them as people. You have to. It's a strange job, yes, but not scary, not usually. Death becomes part of your schedule, like groceries or gas. At least, it did, until that night, that one ride, and the body that didn't freeze. That night started like any other. The call came in just after 11 p.m. A male mid-40s, apparent suicide by hanging. The coroner's office cleared the scene. The police signed off, and by 12:30 I was rolling through the snow-slicked streets toward the hospital morgue. There was nothing unusual on paper, no foul play suspected, no family at the scene, just a name, Thomas Granger, the kind of name you forget even before you finish reading it. It had been snowing hard all evening, the kind of snow that eats all the sound around you. Everything was blanketed in white, quiet. My breath fogged the inside of the windshield. The radio played some old AM station that faded in and out like a ghost whispering through static. I remember humming along without thinking. I'd done this drive 100 times before. I didn't feel anything. No dread. No warning. The morgue technician on duty was new. I don't remember his name, just that he moved too fast, like he wanted to get it over with. He handed me the paperwork, muttered something about ligature marks, and helped load the body into the bag. The man was in a standard black body bag zipped all the way up, still, cold, normal. There's a process to this. You double-check the tag, sign the release, and then you drive. The hospital lot was nearly empty. The snow fell heavier now, covering my tracks as fast as I made them. I climbed behind the wheel, turned the key, and the hearse started with a low groan. The heater kicked in. I didn't think twice. The drive from Ashton Regional to St. Elias takes about 40 minutes on a clear night. With the snow it would take longer. Still, I wasn't worried. This was routine. A man died. I moved his body. I'd done it countless times. Nothing haunted about it. I didn't even look in the rearview mirror. That's the funny part. I always look, always, because it's just a reflex. But not that night. Not one. I remember reaching the first red light and realizing I hadn't checked the mirror at all. Not when I left the hospital. Not when I merged onto the road. Not when I felt that sudden cold draft hit the back of my neck. Even then, I told myself it was nothing. Just the cold creeping in from the back door seal. Maybe the heater wasn't working right. The snow, the time of night, my imagination. But that's how it always starts, isn't it? With the things we ignore. The first time I felt something was wrong, truly, unmistakably wrong, was when I pulled into the St. Elias garage and the back doors of the hearse unlocked on their own. That's not supposed to happen. The hearse has manual locks. There's no automatic sensor, no fancy remote. I always unlock it myself with the key, once the vehicle is parked and off. But the moment I turned off the ignition that night, I heard it click. Both rear doors, unlatched. As if someone inside had done it from the other side. I sat there a moment, hands still on the steering wheel, staring at nothing. The radio had gone dead, just soft empty static now. I turned and looked at the back through the mesh divider. Still zipped, still dark. I should have gone straight inside, logged the paperwork and done the usual handoff. But something kept me in that driver's seat. A prickling instinct. Not fear exactly, more like confusion, laced with dread. I opened the driver's door and stepped out into the garage. The snow was still falling, swirling under the sodium lights like ash. Everything felt quiet, too quiet. The hum of the mortuary's furnace should have been running, but all I could hear was the soft tick of the hearse cooling down. I walked around to the back. The handles were already slightly raised. I don't know why I did it, but I zipped open the bag just a little. A few inches. And that's when I noticed it. His eyes were open. Not wide, not bulging, just slightly parted. Glossy, unfocused, but open. Now look. I've dealt with post-mortem changes. I know eyelids don't always stay closed. But there was something conscious in that gaze, like he was pretending to be dead, like he knew I was looking. I stepped back fast, zipped the bag up and slammed the doors shut. I didn't say anything to the embalmer when I handed off the paperwork. I didn't know how to put it into words. Hey, the body blinked at me. No thanks. I needed answers. So I did something I'd never done before. I went into the file room. That's where the records are kept, not just forms and receipts. Histories. I dug through recent cases, searching for Granger. What I found didn't make sense. Thomas Granger had been brought in 2 weeks ago, same name, same age, same cause of death, hanging. I looked at the tag again, the one I signed that night, issue date tonight, new signature, different coroner, same man. Only one problem. There was no record of a second death. At first I thought maybe it was a clerical error. Duplicate name. Someone filed the wrong date. A mix-up between cases. It happens. But I couldn't let it go. Something felt off in a way that had nothing to do with paperwork. The next day, I checked the cold storage logs. Bodies brought in. Transferred, cremated. Everything is supposed to be logged with timestamps. But there was no entry for Thomas Granger on the day I brought him in. Not under that name. Not under any name with a matching age or location. It was like he had never arrived. I asked Linda, one of the prep assistants, if she remembered receiving him. She looked at me blankly. You mean the guy from the suicide last week, she asked. We finished his embalming 2 days ago. No, I said. I brought in another one. Last night. She frowned, shook her head. No one brought anything in last night. The garage was empty. I was here till 2 a.m., finishing the Cosgrove case. I stood there staring at her, my heart pounding louder than her words. I was in that garage. I had driven the hearse. I had unzipped that bag. But if no one else saw him, who did I bring in? I went back to the hearse later that night. I had to see it again. I had to prove to myself it happened. Maybe a smudge of blood. A hair. Something left behind. I opened the back doors with shaking hands and pulled out the stretcher mat. What I saw made me stumble back. Right there imprinted into the black vinyl padding were 3 faint indentations. Knuckle prints. Not fists, not scratches, just knocks. 3 of them, spaced perfectly apart, as if someone had reached up from inside the body bag and tapped. I ran my fingers across them. Cold. Stiff, embedded just deep enough to warp the light. And then I noticed something else. A small patch of the stretcher's padding was slightly warmer than the rest. It wasn't heat from the sun or the garage. It felt body warm. It had been over 12 hours since I'd driven. That hearse had been sitting in a below-freezing lot. But that patch was warm like a heartbeat. And the smell, it wasn't the usual sterile odor of disinfectant or formaldehyde. It was faint, almost sweet but spoiled, like milk left out overnight. Faint enough to question but strong enough to know it wasn't just in my head. That was when I heard it. The softest sound, a tap from the inside wall of the hearse. Not from outside. Not from the wind. From within the metal. 3 quick knocks. Same rhythm. Same message. And I knew Thomas Granger wasn't gone. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in my apartment above the mortuary. Lights on. Every sound pulling my nerves tighter. I kept playing the knocks in my head. 1, 2, 3. Always that same rhythm. Always like it meant something. The next morning, I went back to the garage, half expecting the knocks to start again. But everything was quiet. Too quiet. I got inside the hearse and shut the doors, sat in the driver's seat, not turning the key, not moving, just listening. And after a few minutes I heard it again, but different this time. Not knocking. Clicks. Rhythmic. Deliberate. 3 short clicks, pause, 2 long, 1 short. It wasn't random. I scrambled for my phone and started recording. Then I grabbed a notebook from the glove compartment and started writing them down. Long, short, short. No, wait, that wasn't right. It hit me like ice water down my spine. Morse code. I looked it up, fumbling, my fingers shaking. The first set, 3 short, 2 long, 1 short. It didn't translate cleanly, but the pattern kept repeating, over and over. Eventually it spelled something crude, incomplete. But the last string I translated chilled me more than anything else. HELP. That was when I snapped. I ran back inside, burst into the records room again, and dug deeper into Thomas Granger's file. The original file, the one dated 2 weeks ago. I noticed something I hadn't before, the autopsy photos. The ligature marks on his neck were flat, not angled, not consistent with suicide by hanging, and his hyoid bone, the little U-shaped bone in your neck, was intact. That doesn't happen when someone hangs. It does happen though when someone is held down, and the rope is tightened slowly. I stared at that photo, my stomach turning. This wasn't a suicide. It was a staged killing. Someone made it look like he did it himself. Someone went to a lot of trouble to fake the signs, and somehow he ended up in my care again, like he was trying to be heard. That night, I called a friend of mine, Detective Jeffries, now retired. He owed me a few favors from back when we transported bodies for the county. When I told him the name, his tone changed. Granger? Yeah, that case never sat right with me, but they closed it fast. Too fast. Would you look into it again? I asked. Silent. Then, only if you're ready for what you might find. I didn't know what that meant yet, but I would soon. Because Thomas wasn't the only one. Jeffries didn't waste time. 2 days later, he called me back, voice low and urgent. I pulled what I could. You were right. Thomas Granger's file was edited after the case closed. Multiple entries scrubbed, photos removed, cause of death amended twice. But here's the real kicker. He's not the only one. He sent me a list of names, 5 of them, all within the last year, all listed as suicide, all men between 40 and 55, hanging, overdose, carbon monoxide, and all of them cremated within 72 hours. No autopsy, no family protests, except one, Marcus Reed, died in July, the only one buried. I found his obituary. Small blurb, no service, no visitors listed, just a plot number at Haven Hills Cemetery. I drove out there that night. The cemetery was empty save for a groundskeeper locking the gate. I slipped past the edge of the lot and found the grave, Marcus Reed. No flowers, no headstone, just a metal tag staked into the dirt. But the position of the body, it wasn't right. I know it sounds crazy, but I could feel it. The tag was off-center. The ground above him had settled unevenly, like the body wasn't aligned right underneath. I took photos, sent them to Jeffries. He called me 10 minutes later. Check your inbox, he said. He'd pulled the last known files on Marcus Reed, and there it was again. Same bruising pattern on the neck, inconsistent with hanging, broken capillaries under the eyes, hemorrhaging in the wrists and ankles, signs of restraint. They'd called it suicide, but everything screamed torture. Jeffries told me he found something else too. DNA trace from one of the scenes matched a John Doe from overseas, ex-military, honorable discharge, no criminal record, died in a vehicle fire 2 years ago. Except he said, this guy's prints keep showing up. Granger, Reed, Sutton, all scenes had partials matching that dead mercenary. How's that possible? I asked. Either someone reused his prints, Jeffries said, or he's not dead. And then he said something that made the cold I'd felt in the hearse seem like a summer breeze. Daniel, I think someone's tying up loose ends. These men, they were all part of a defunct investment group under federal review, and someone out there doesn't want the truth to surface. That night, I sat in the hearse again. No music, no radio, just silence. I waited. I wanted to hear the knocks again. I wanted a sign, but what I heard wasn't a knock. It was a voice, whispered, right behind my ear. You found me. After that night, after that whisper, I knew I wasn't dealing with just a cover-up. This was something darker, something organized. Jeffries and I kept digging, piecing together threads that were never meant to be tied. All 5 victims were once shareholders in a shell corporation called Langridge Financial Solutions. Sounds legit, right? Just a mid-level firm operating out of an anonymous office in downtown Ashton. But when we pulled records, old tax documents, buried SEC filings, we found the same thing over and over. Phantom transactions, offshore routing, silent partners that didn't exist. They were laundering money through donations, pensions, even burial trusts. That's what chilled me the most. Some of it was funneled through funeral homes. I recognized one of the addresses, St. Elias. I sat there staring at the document, feeling sick. Had I been part of it without knowing? Were the services I helped transport linked to this? According to the records, Granger, Reed, and the others had all tried to pull out of the deal in early 2023, just after the federal probe started. One of them even tried to talk to the press, but they all died before their names ever made it to a court docket. Murdered, silenced, wrapped up in tidy little suicide bows. Except Marcus, the buried one. Maybe he'd started to push back too late. Maybe that's why his body was planted, rushed, shoved into the dirt before anyone could ask questions. But it was Granger who broke the cycle. He didn't rest. He refused to. Jeffries told me there were rumors about Langridge using private contractors, not just lawyers or fixers, hitmen, black ops types from overseas, men trained to disappear after the job was done. One name came up again, Desmond Lark, former UK Special Forces, officially dead since 2021, but his fingerprints had surfaced on at least 3 bodies, ours included. Only there was no record of Desmond Lark's remains, no burial, no cremation, just a line in a file, presumed dead, and yet his trace kept showing up on ligatures, door handles, even vehicle upholstery, like a ghost, Jeffries muttered, or someone making sure he stays a ghost. Whoever was behind this had buried more than just bodies. They buried truth. Every scrap of evidence swept away under forged documents, fast-track burials, closed casket funerals, and me. I was a pawn, until I heard those knocks, until someone dead said my name. That night, I sat by the grave of Marcus Reed, alone, holding the list of names, and I whispered into the cold night air, "Who else do you want me to find?" And I swear, something whispered back, "All of them." After that night, I couldn't go back to how things were. Every call, every transport, every body bag, I treated them like confessions waiting to be heard. I started inspecting everything. I kept a private log of unusual marks, inconsistent injuries, weird paperwork. I stopped trusting the official tags, and started taking my own photos, quietly, discreetly, before I even left the pickup sites. What used to be routine now felt like investigation. Every wrinkle in a death certificate, every bruise that didn't match the cause, like a voice whispering, "Look again." I told myself it was just caution, that I wasn't obsessed. But that was a lie. I was chasing the dead, hoping another one would speak to me the way Granger did. And they did. Not all of them, not even most. But sometimes, small things, a blood pattern that didn't align with gravity, a needle mark in the wrong vein, a smell on the skin that didn't match hospital chemicals, sulfur maybe, like burned metal. I found one man with ligature marks under his shirt collar, yet the report said cardiac arrest. Another woman was tagged as overdose, but there were burns on her wrists, fresh, like restraints. I filed everything in a folder hidden behind the spare tire in the hearse. No one knew, not even Jeffries, until the Jenkins case. Middle-aged man, real estate investor, found hanged in his garage. Coroner said suicide, but when I opened the body bag to check, his eyes were bloodshot to hell. Subconjunctival hemorrhages, consistent with manual strangulation, and there on the inside of his left wrist was something I hadn't seen before. A small imprint, raised slightly, like a seal had been pressed into the skin. 3 letters, LFS, Langridge Financial Solutions. They'd branded him. Jeffries lost it when I sent the photo. "This isn't cleanup anymore," he said. "This is punishment. They're sending messages." That's when I realized, Granger didn't knock just to be found. He knocked to warn me. They weren't just killing the ones who talked, they were eliminating anyone connected to the files, quietly, efficiently. And I was carrying the pieces, night after night. In the back of my hearse, I'd unknowingly driven the victims of a hidden war, a cleanup operation, with names, faces, and now symbols. I started sleeping in short shifts, keeping a crowbar in the front seat. Every sound made me jump. Every phone call felt like a setup. I started seeing vans that didn't belong on my route, people watching from corners with no reason to be there. But I kept driving, kept listening, because something had changed in me. Not just fear, not just guilt, purpose. I wasn't a hearse driver anymore. I was the last witness. The truth is, I don't think I would have believed any of this if it hadn't been me behind the wheel. But after Granger, after the whispers, after the marks, I started paying attention to things I used to ignore. The smell in the hearse after certain jobs, not just decay but something more ancient. The way the frost never settled on the rear windows on some nights. The way my radio would cut to dead air whenever I passed Holloway Bridge. Always at the same bend in the road. Always when I was transporting someone tied to Langridge. And then there were the knocks. They didn't stop. Not every night, but sometimes just before sunrise I'd hear them. Soft, insistent. 3. Always 3. From inside the hearse, from a drawer in the embalming room. Once, from behind the chapel wall. It wasn't just grief echoing through old wood, it was something trying to reach out, and I started to think, maybe I wasn't the only one listening. Maybe some of the dead weren't just trying to speak, they were trying to guide, trying to show the patterns no one else wanted to see. Maybe something else had pulled me into this, some force that lived between grief and justice, the ones who die with unfinished truths. Maybe they don't move on, maybe they ride with us, waiting for someone who'll hear the knock and not pretend it's the wind. I started lighting a candle before every shift, started saying names under my breath, started watching, listening, not just to the living, to the ones who had been silenced. And sometimes when I'm driving late at night with nothing but the hum of the road and the weight of another lost name behind me, I swear I feel a presence in the back seat, not threatening, just waiting. And if they need me, if the silence starts to break again, if one more knock comes, I'll answer, because now I know what happens when you ignore them. Now I know how loud a dead man can be. The most terrifying thing I've lived isn't the sound of a knock from the back of a hearse, or the sight of a dead man's eyes slowly opening. It's how ordinary it all seemed at first, how silence can wear the mask of peace, how paperwork can bury the truth deeper than any grave. People think horror wears a face, some ghoul in the dark, but that's not what haunts me. It's the quiet, the sealed bag, the natural causes written in neat print, hiding a man's final scream. You see, evil doesn't always come with fangs or blood. Sometimes it signs its name at the bottom of a death certificate. Sometimes it rides with you 3 feet away, zipped inside vinyl, whispering truths no one else wants to hear. And that whisper, that tap, that faint heat where there should be none, that's where the dead speak. They don't use words, they use details. The things we miss, a smudge, a bruise, a number that doesn't add up. And when no one listens long enough, they find someone who can't look away anymore. Someone like me. So I keep driving. I keep the hearse running. I double check the rear doors. I speak names under my breath. Because if there's even the slightest chance that Granger was telling the truth, if the dead are still knocking, still trying to be heard, then I'll keep listening. Even when it costs me sleep, even when I'm scared to close my eyes. Because maybe, just maybe, this is how we fight back. Not with guns, not with badges, with memory, with refusal, with one man behind the wheel, saying I see you, and to you listening now, if you ever hear a knock when you're alone, when no one should be there, don't ignore it. It might be nothing, but it might be someone who needs you to notice. And if that knock ever comes again, I'll be ready, because I know what it means now, and I'll keep listening. Always.